Hey YouTubers, it's me, Lonnie Clark, Nuts for Art. I really wanted to put up a video today because it is the 75th anniversary of when the United States decided to experiment on the planet, start its experimentation on a mega scale. We all know about the lies of the Nagasaki, Hiroshima bombs, or anybody who follows this channel probably accepts that those were lies. I haven't been on, obviously I'm in a new environment, I moved, so I've been very busy. And I've kept thinking that I was going to do a video, but I haven't done a video just because I didn't want to become part of the white noise. And I was going to put up a video anyways today because of the anniversary of Hiroshima and Nagasaki in a couple days. And, you know, we're coming on the 10-year marking of when Fukushima happened, the worst nuclear catastrophe ever in the history of the planet. And this morning I watched a video about Tom Ackermann, H. Thomas Ackermann. I recommend anybody who's not following him to go follow him. Tom's a friend of mine that I met through this YouTube channel, and he put up a video about the new abnormal. He's been putting up these whole series of ones, and this morning he reposted from another cat, I guess, on the internet, really vile, the usual, just what I call mental barf, where, you know, they're chiding people for following along and being sheeple and taking the vaccine and, you know, like just the whole destruction, cataloging how people are, you know, just chiding people into feeling humiliated about themselves. I don't know the point of all that. I honestly couldn't listen to it. But Tom's point is that we're entering into a new abnormal, and I had to make this video even more so about the new abnormal because, you know, I live very close to Portland, and my daughter and I went up to the Portland protests on Tuesday night. And it was so bizarre. I wanted to videotape it and put it up on YouTube, and all of the activists there were like, no, because the cops find us and, you know, they kidnap people and they're taking names and counting heads from when people post up about videos on YouTube. So I took all this video postage that I couldn't take. Now, what kind of abnormal is that, where you have a protest fighting against the fascists and then people are afraid to have it publicly advertised? So now the world really does think that the protesters are the ones who are, you know, starting the violence, which they are not. The cops in Portland literally are squashing an uprising because they want to keep white supremacy, institutional racism firmly in place. And that is in fact what the nuclear industry is all about too. They didn't just accidentally drop it on the Japanese for no reason. They intentionally dropped it, and in fact, interestingly enough, one of the bombs actually hit the center of the Catholic Church in Japan, which again, you know, the military doesn't like the fact that the Catholic Church has so much power. So, and they were siding with the Nazis. So was that an accident? I don't know. But this idea about the new abnormal, I mean, I feel like we've already been in the new abnormal. We have been living the new abnormal at least since World War II. Since we started bombing people and going, oh yeah, we can just go sweep it up. Let's just sweep up that plutonium dust and bury it under the ground. Everything's perfectly fine. Perfectly fine, honey. Let's get our martinis and smoke a cigarette and have a cocktail and forget about the fact that we have destroyed human DNA for time immemorial. Like, this stuff does not go away. In fact, it was so interesting because I had this kind of analogy about how we have this nuclear industry that's convincing us that they are benign and they're doing it for the good of humanity, when really it's all about destruction and control. And the idea that we have what's going on in the United States, this white supremacy, is firmly rooted in our culture. And it's as if we can't talk about it either. We're not allowed to talk about nuclear contamination, and we're not allowed to talk about racist contamination. I want to drink my coffee before it gets cold. There is something, maybe you guys can help me meet this one out, but there is something about the two issues that are intricately involved, and that is the new abnormal. I mean, when America, quote, freed the slaves, they didn't really free the slaves, did they? They just created a different type of servitude. And the new abnormal is about us accepting whatever is handed out to us and going, oh yeah, that's okay. Like now, we all talk to computers. We all sit in chairs for 8 to 10 hours a day. You know, I guess that's the benefit of the lockdown. People don't have to go into their offices and sitting in a cubicle anymore. They're having to rethink how business runs. I mean, the reality is capitalism requires slavery. It requires another. It requires a less than. It requires poverty. You know, in that video that Tom posted this morning, the guy was talking about we've all become socialists. Socialism is not a bad word. No, we haven't all become socialists. We have all become authoritarianism. It's like we all don't mind complying to the people in power. You know, people refuse to vote, at least in America. I think it's something like 25% of the people in America who are eligible to vote, because they have been firmly convinced that their vote doesn't matter. Well, if you're not voting, your vote doesn't matter. And if all you do is vote, your vote doesn't matter. Because you can get in the best people in the world, and as long as we let them get bought out by other people. And this is the thing, we're so far beyond it. Like, the system has to collapse. It is collapsing. Half of America are out of jobs. I mean, the disdain from the people in power towards the average American is just blatant now. This is why we got Trader Trump. You know, he's out there saying, I'm with you, while he's raping the American people right in front of them. I mean, it's just incomprehensible where we're at. And the Democrats are biting their nails going, I hope he doesn't steal the election. He's going to fucking steal the election. This is the new abnormal. Tom's right. We're living a new abnormal. But guess what? I think we've been living a new abnormal really honestly since the Manhattan Project started. Once Americans created a system where you couldn't tell your wife where you were working, you couldn't tell your neighbors where you were working, you couldn't talk about anything, you couldn't say things, where the system required you zip your lip and, you know, call it a day for the good of the country and for the good of the world. You know, secrets are never good. And now what's happened is 75 years later with Fukushima and Hiroshima and Nagasaki, like, you notice it's all right there on that one little island. Like, it's all coming down to destroying culture. That's what this is about. The Japanese had a very strict culture, and it has been decimated. And now we don't even talk about the birth defects of people still being born from those bombings. We're not talking about the birth defects still being born from people in Chernobyl or 3 Mile Island or any other nuclear contaminated site. I don't know about you guys, but I was really happy to hear that Lacey Clay lost his primary in St. Louis, because Lacey Clay, every time I called him about the plight of the people in St. Louis and the ongoing nuclear contamination there, his office said thank you very much and didn't do anything about it. So this is the new normal, where we have elected representatives who basically don't do anything and give us lip service, and we're expected to pay taxes, And yes, you can get involved, but only to a certain point, because the people in power, like, it's not even the military keeping us out. It's the party systems keeping us out. About 10 years ago, I was delusional and thought I might get involved with the Democratic Party. And I canvassed the area to get people to vote, and I actually helped get elected a Democrat for the first time, a Democratic county commissioner for the seat, Rob Handy. Well, we were very successful at getting Rob Handy elected, because once you get the electorate involved and have them vote, it's really easy to turn to a candidate who is really for the people. But once he got seated, the Republican dirty tricks did the same thing that they always did. They accused Rob of stealing money, they tied him up in litigation, they publicly humiliated him and wrote stories in an article in local newspapers to keep him from being able to run again. Now, he won his case in litigation, but it did kill his political career. And it's kind of like me on my YouTube channel, same thing. Like, the reason I don't post is I'm sick of all the nasty comments, having to watch my YouTube channel all day long, and having to, like, delete people who call me names, who tell me I'm stupid, who tell me I don't know anything, who accuse me of horrible things that I never did. I mean, putting up a video on YouTube is quite a public event. And I feel compelled to do it because, people are searching for answers. They want some continuity. They want normalcy. We don't have normalcy. I commented on Tom's video that I just mentioned that it was just vile. I couldn't even listen to most of what this guy was saying. I skipped through it. We've all heard it all before. It's Alex Jones on steroids put into a costume. I mean, it was really vile. But interestingly enough, and Tom said, well, the point of it was to show how the new abnormal is, the vileness of it all. But to me, we have had abnormal. I mean, what's normal? I mean, that's the thing. What's normal? What is our new, the normal used to be you could beat your wife, beat your kids, sexually molest teenagers and little kids and nobody would bother you. You could get into a car and hit somebody and you wouldn't go to jail. I mean, the new normal was never normal. This industrialized age, the post-industrialized age, I guess we're in the computer age, I call it the Age of Fission, Tom coined it, we can't undo nuclear contamination. That's the new abnormal. That's where the line starts. When they dropped a plutonium bomb, I think it was on Nagasaki. Hiroshima was a hydrogen bomb, Nagasaki was a plutonium bomb. When they dropped a plutonium bomb on Nagasaki, they spread plutonium around the planet that is still with us. The half-life of plutonium is 24,500 years. So that 10-year, 15-year period where they were bomb testing bombed our planet 2,000 times around the world. Different countries, different areas, different payloads. But guess what? We are now in the age of fission, and we are not even allowed to talk about it. We can't say a word about it. We can't talk. You can't talk about nuclear contamination. You're considered a conspiracy theorist. It's incomprehensible, to be honest. We're commemorating Nagasaki and Hiroshima as if it was a holiday, as if it was something to be proud of, when we still have nuclear weapons. The United States is now ramping up and reinvigorating its nuclear weapons instead of disarming all nuclear weapons and all nuclear processes and saying we don't know enough about this stuff to make a difference. And it's because of the one drop rule. One drop of plutonium is as bad as a whole cup, so you might as well, who cares? They're all in. It's the new normal, or as Tom calls it, the new abnormal. But to whine about this whole COVID conspiracy, the depopulation, to me, these are all just places of privilege where people are finally waking up. I mean, I grew up in a severely violent childhood. I mean, severely violent childhood. My normal was violence. My normal was abuse. And frankly, that's the normal that the rest of the world is just now getting. They're going, wait a minute, we're supposed to have loving parents, and we're supposed to have a country that works for us, and we're supposed to, supposed to's don't work. We're never supposed to do anything except be human beings being human. And frankly, humans have pretty much betrayed themselves by refusing to walk in love. And that, I think, is, the point of this message is because really, the new abnormal, it's always been abnormal. There isn't, you're just now dawning on the people that have had privileged lives that there's a new abnormal. But for those of us who have been beaten and battered most of our lives and abused most of our lives, this is why people fall in line, click their heels, and say Sig Heil. Because at a certain point, you just get sick of it. It's easier just to go along, to get along. Just because we need something, some type of routine, a normal routine. You get what I'm saying? So now the new abnormal is listening to people spout off and demean each other about how they're not paying attention and you're not woke and you're not doing this and you're not doing that. And you know what? We're all super screwed. That is the bottom line. There isn't anybody going to get out of this fishbowl alive. There's only one to a box. We go in alone, we come in alone, and we go out alone. And that's the nature of living. And what you do in between is the value we give our own lives. And how we treat each other is the value that we give our own lives. I have a family member who thinks Donald Trump is a really great human being. I find that shocking. And she does live in La La Land. She can't handle real conversations about things, which is partly why she thinks he's a great guy, because she can't handle the truth. When I told her that he, basically he designated high level nuclear contamination into low level and buried it, she's like, well, we don't know if that's going to harm us. I guess we don't. We'll find out in 150 years from now when there's not a single human being left on the planet. So it's incomprehensible the ways we try to make ourselves feel comfortable with the new normal. But look, 75 years after Nagasaki, Hiroshima, Fukushima is still ongoing, Chernobyl is still ongoing, 3 Mile Island is still ongoing. If you guys follow the Department of Energy on YouTube, they proudly put up these 1 or 2 minute videos to talk about how they have remediated all these Manhattan project sites all around the country. If you guys even understood how contaminated with uranium and nuclear contamination we are all over this nation, you would understand why we have high levels of diabetes, high levels of schizophrenia, high levels of autoimmune diseases, high levels of cancer. I mean, the U.S. military disregarded safety from the very beginning. It's like this pandemic thing. The people in charge just ignored everything. And, when the pandemic started, I actually thought it was a shakedown. I didn't really believe it. Until a friend of mine's uncle died from COVID. He got COVID in within 2 weeks, he was dead. So it is real, and I think that there was stuff they could have done to stop the pandemic. I actually believe that they have used this virus to really basically as a political weapon and as a way to destabilize the United States, which quite effectively it's done. And look, we all picked this life. We chose to come in. We're here on purpose. Why did we pick to come in after the bomb was dropped and all this other stuff happened? I have no idea. I don't know. I'm still sorting through why I chose this life myself. But I think the point of this is really just to take heart, because we can actually recreate the future with our thoughts. If we choose positive thoughts, if we visualize the outcome in a positive manner, if we visualize the earth being remediated and humanity surviving, I actually really believe that's what happens. I believe our thoughts are themes. And I think it's really important for us not to demean each other and say negative thoughts about each other. And just do, offhandedly make offhanded remarks about each other. Because every single person on this planet is doing the best they can in that moment at that time. Nobody does anything that they think isn't in their own interest at that time. It's almost an impossibility. I mean, you're making the decisions that you think are the right thing at the right time, in that moment. Including the people who make these decisions for greater harm because they are sociopaths and they have no regard for human life or any life on this planet. But that's their model. Can we overcome them? I don't know, but it is certainly worth the effort. I mean, I don't know about you guys, and I'm going to continue on. I know this is getting on. How many minutes is it? I'm going to continue on a few more minutes, because this is something that really bugs me, is the silence that we have to endure about the nuclear contamination. We are expected to accept white supremacy. We are expected to accept nuclear contamination. And those two things, to me, tie in hand, because let's just be clear. They didn't contaminate white neighborhoods. They didn't contaminate rich neighborhoods. They have contaminated poor neighborhoods for people of color, Native Americans, Black, and Hispanic neighborhoods. That's where they're really doing it. And look where they dropped the bomb, on Japan. This is about white supremacy, and white supremacy as a cycle is coming to an end. If we are going to survive as a species, we have to understand we are one human race. There is no difference between any of us, black, white, or any other. We have different cultures, but we don't have different human beings. We're all the same. And this idea that we have to be silent about nuclear contamination and about white supremacy, I mean, they go intricately hand in hand. And when you begin to speak out against either one of them, you're considered a radical. And I guess it is radical to challenge the status quo. I guess that is a radical idea. So maybe, I don't mind being called radical. What the United States did in Japan on Nagasaki and Hiroshima was a crime against humanity, period. They didn't have to drop the bomb. It didn't stop the war. They lied from the get-go. They sent their doctors in, but then they shredded all their documents. So they knew exactly what they did at the very beginning, which is why they worked so hard to cover it all up. It was truly a crime against humanity. And we just saw this big explosion in Beirut. It was like the biggest explosion that's happened since the World War II testings, actually. And it was not a nuclear bomb test, but it was that same type of power that just blew out 300,000 people lost their homes. And God knows how many people have died. They probably haven't even counted everybody who's missing yet. It is time for humanity to check itself. And time for us little peons to get engaged and not lose hope. And I think it's very important for us to guard our thoughts and guard our hearts and guard our minds and refuse to wallow in the stew. This is why I found Tom's video very offensive today, because it adds nothing to the conversation. All it does is create more vileness. And to me, I just can't see even listening to that for 5 minutes. It doesn't prove a point at all that we already know we're in the depths of humanity. For God's sakes, our president the people that we're going to elect to President of the United States are known child abusers, sexual predators. We already know that. The two people, Biden and Trump. So how low has the, quote, leader of the free world gone? Well, we're seeing that there is no leadership and there is not much freedom. Again, I guess I could get into that, but what does freedom mean, right? But that's for another video. I just want to encourage people to keep their chin up, to, I don't know. I'm personally really sick about talking about all the nuclear, like, you know, we can talk about all the nuclear contamination. I listen avidly to Nuclear Hot Seat. Plowshares now has Plowshares Fund has a podcast on YouTube that I listen to. I listen to interviews and follow the newspapers like nuclearnews.net and Beyond Nuclear, and there is a lot of movement, but equal to all the movement is the silence, the deafening silence of the media and the rest of the population about it all. It's almost as if we're just expected to accept it as the new normal. And I guess it is because we're not getting rid of it. Maybe that's what the Age of Fission means. Anyways, you guys, I'm going to end here, and I hope that you're taking care of yourselves and just be kind to yourself and be kind to others. And whatever it is that you're having to experience in this lockdown and this whole period of like weirdness where they're trying to reset our culture, you know, it's up to us. That's the thing. It's up to us to create the future. And the way we create the future is by conducting ourselves properly in the now. And that means figuring out what you can do to make your life as full and happy as you possibly can. And be engaged where you feel like you need to be engaged instead of pissing and moaning and being a set of vinegar. You know, take some action. Be engaged and fight the bastards that are in charge. Like, call them up, poke them in the eye, go to their offices. Don't let them get away with the lies. You know, push them to change. I think that, I don't know if that's all we can do, but, or maybe all of this action doesn't really matter. I said, this is the gaslighting that we've been all, you know, like, does it matter, does it not matter? What does matter is your own sense of well-being. So do what makes you feel like the right thing. Like Tom always says, do the right thing. You know what the right thing is. So just go do it without hesitation. Love yourself enough so that you give yourself permission to go do that. And to the people of Japan, I apologize. As an American, I'm sorry for the crimes of my forefathers. And to the black people of America, I apologize for the crimes of my forefathers. My great-grandfather was a slave owner. So it's a weird burden learning about all of this and understanding that it's up to us. And the only way that we can make it better is by acknowledging it and being determined to hold ourselves to a higher standard and be better human beings. Put your courage behind you guys. I'll talk to you soon. I don't know how soon, but sometime in the future. Bye.